So, good morning, everyone. So I can see the participants are all flowing in now. So, while you are all flowing into the room, I would like to say welcome to everybody. I would like to also say happy Easter. And I'm going to say happy eclipse season. It's a pretty intense eclipse period at the moment. So I'm going to put a Sagittarian slant on it and say happy eclipse, because I'm sure everyone I know seems to be feeling it in some way, shape, or form. So welcome to the Oz OPA live today. And I am very, very thrilled and excited to be with three amazing human beings that I love and admire very much, who also happen to be fantastic astrologers. So just to start, I, of course, will just introduce, we have Dijana, who lives in Victoria. We have Marc, who is originally from Sydney, now living in Queensland on the Gold Coast. And we have Julija, also in Victoria, and myself in New South Wales. So we are a wonderful East Coast team today for Australia. And while I'm checking, yay, go the East Coast. So I was reflecting and I wanted to share this little statistic before we get started, which is just how much wisdom we are bringing to the table today, because we have between us 120 or thereabouts Venus returns. We have 20 Jupiter returns. We have 1.5 Neptune returns. So we're at our Neptune opposition after having one whole cycle, and we are about to reach our Pluto return. So I think we all look pretty good based on that. And I just thought, wow, when we think about the cycles.
Feeling old.
Yeah, it's great. So everyone, just to give you a quick rundown of how today is going to work, we are going to kick off with Julija, who I will introduce in just a moment, and then we'll go to Dijana, and then myself, and then Marc. We have a couple of hours. We will keep an eye on the chat, the chat. Generally, we try and save the Q&A until the end, just so that we all get through what we have to share today. But if there is something really pressing and any of us see it, please, guys, just say, hey, someone's written in the chat that wants an answer sort of now for something. So I always feel a little bit challenged too with a webinar because I can't see anybody. And those of you that know me know I like to see people and I like to talk. So probably a good thing that I can't see you all, or it could be a very long webinar. But anyway, so let's get started. I am very happy and very honoured to have Julija Simas here with us today. And Julija is, I first met Julija many years ago at an FAA conference when she was out there pioneering her CIA, so the Cosmic Intelligence Agency that she is the head warrior of, and still today pioneering the most fantastic lectures and workshops and retreats. And Julija has many, many years of experience and wisdom and many specialties, of which one of them today, good thing, Marc, I have to record. Sorry, everyone. Good thing I remembered that.
It says it's recording.
Oh, it started already. That's right. It's a webinar. It starts recording. I didn't have to do it. Oh, sorry, everyone. OPA would not be happy with me if I told them we hadn't recorded today. It's great. All right, sorry. So I can all good. So I can continue and say thank you for being here today, Julija. Welcome. And we are all very much looking forward to hearing your presentation, which is all about Venus, star point, and the one that we'll be experiencing next, I believe. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you for those words, Lisa. We're all doing great work, and I think the best thing, that I do and have started with the CIA is that I love it. So, we're doing what we love, like all of us. So, it's just part of the mission. So let me share my screen, and hopefully this all works wonderfully. You can see my screen. I'll just get my pointer. And yes, you can see the screen here. Yep. Cool. All right. So happy Easter, everyone. I think I might have just said that, but we're in eclipse season. Mercury is about to go retrograde. We're all probably a little bit on the edge. And as we look into this year, we're already immersed in quite, by 4 months, really, 3.5 months nearly. One of the big points that happen every year, and in some years twice, is that Venus is conjunct the Sun. And with astrology, with astrologers generally, we know about, Venus conjunct the Sun in her retrograde pass, that happens every 8 years in the same part of the zodiac or in the same area of our charts. But this time, when Venus and the Sun come together, it's what we call the superior conjunction. But in my research and in my time working with the Venus star, I find that the outer conjunction point of Venus and the Sun is just as significant as a retrograde. And I'm going to show you why. And the reasons, and in order to fully understand that, I know there's quite a lot of people online here that already, know more about the Venus star. But, for those that don't, I need to go through kind of, let's say, the pattern and the mechanics to a certain extent so that we can understand how significant this point that is coming up at 14 degrees of Gemini on the 4th and 5th of June this year is one of the focal points of the year for me. And every year there's a Venus star point. Every 4 years there's 2 points in a year. And they happen every 9.5 months. So when we just even think about Venus and the Sun come together, either as a retrograde or an outer conjunction point every 9.5 months, we are in the creation story that we pretty much are living, okay? And as we know, astrology reflects to us the transits that we're living, how it's happening in our lives. And when we track Venus and the Venus star, we just go, wow. It's another one of those wow things in astrology where the cycles, return and repeat in patterns we see. But Venus is one of the most regular cycles that we can actually, let's say, follow. And it's like clockwork. The whole star moves slightly backwards over our lifetimes through our charts. And so when what we call put the Venus star in our charts, the 5 points that we were born into, we see the pattern that we were all born into, okay? And we watch this star through our lifetimes. And if you're going to really do it seriously, you put the Venus star from birth, let's say the birth star, into your chart, the 5 points that happened, the point that you were born into, which we call the leading star point, and then the next points that happened every 9.5 months for the next 4 years into your chart, and you see them move through your lifetime. Now, if you see one of these points, let's just say this is the Scorpio point, and the Scorpio point has moved backwards over your descendant in your lifetime. I've done research with people and all kinds of stuff. This is when friends died. Unusually, like things that happen. I'm talking about Scorpio here. So someone lost their best friend or their husband. And okay, that's about someone dying. But, for someone else, the Venus star point, was on their midheaven and past their midheaven over, an 8-year kind of cycle. And of course, this was a highlight of their lives, of their career, of, being out there, being in the public, being recognized. And so this is how we want to work with the star as I sort of talk about it today, and concentrate on the Gemini star point, the 14 degrees, or rounding it off to 15 degrees of Gemini, and where that is in our astrology chart, okay? I'm going to go back to, again, the chart for this moment, although that's not the most important thing. when we work with the Venus star, it's not about that day, the 4th of June or the 5th of June here in Australia, that, oh my God, what's going to happen on that day? When we work with the Venus star, we're looking at what happened back at the last retrograde, which was in Leo, and we're looking ahead to the next retrograde that is coming in Aries, because pretty much we're in the whole cycle, in this one 19-month cycle that is part of the whole story of this 19 months. And where this Venus star point in Gemini is the middle point of this cycle that we are in right now. So keeping that in mind, let's continue. So when you work with the Venus star and you look at the star for your whole lifetime, let's say, you start seeing patterns. And of course, as the Venus star point happens every 9.5 months, every time there is a star point, we're going, oh, okay, what's this pattern all about? What house is it falling in for me? Again, we're concentrating on Gemini. What happened 4 years ago? What happened 8 years ago? What happened 12 years ago? What happened 16 years ago? You can go back in your whole lifetime and recognize the points that were retrograde and recognize the points that were the superior conjunction now, and really get a theme of the perspectives that change every time that point is reiterated. And again, the magic of this cycle is that through the zodiac, we have a 5-pointed star that is eternally, being drawn. When we draw that magical pentacle on the paper and we don't have to take our pen off, this is exactly what it's happening, it's doing in our charts. So when you think about that, it's like, well, again, like any cycle, like eclipse cycles, Saros cycles, the dragon through your chart or whatever. The Venus star is probably the most, beautiful one that you can see. So you really only ever have to know about 5 points. It's like knowing eclipse cycles for the year, right? Where's the eclipses this year? What's the current Venus star? This is 5 points that I just automatically work with all the time. So I know that when I'm, if I was doing a reading for someone now, I would also be examining where's the next star point and what's that meaning to them and their process and their evolution and what they're moving to right now that needs to be revisited. And even if it's not a retrograde, it still needs revisiting because it's a theme that comes up to do with Venus and to do with the sun. And when we put those two together, of course, it's like manifesting spirit. It's like, what are we here to do and how are we, let's say, growing and evolving because the sun's involved, and how are we implementing that through Venus, through our desires, our passions, our loves, and what we're attracted to in our own, unique sort of version of ourselves, right? So it's important to understand that it is a divine, eternal rhythm that we can really sort of connect to in our astrology charts. And it's fractal like. So when we understand the Venus cycle more, we know that the 1.6 ratio, which is 1.6 years of one complete cycle, happens 5 times in 8 years. And this is exactly the golden mean ratio. So how can we ignore not working with a beautiful star pattern in our astrology charts when it has such an amazing, cosmic connection to this beautiful fractal that is really forever turning in our charts? So of course there's 5 points, this never-ending pentacle, and then there's, the rose pattern. So the rose pattern is made from the Venus retrograde, only the Venus retrograde pattern, because the loop is actually the retrograde when the Venus comes and loops around and turns backwards and comes around again, right? And the star is the reiteration of the whole pattern, meaning 10 points in 8 years in the end. So there's 5 points, but they're twice stamped on in an 8-year pattern, okay? So it's important, again, that we're not just looking at an 8-year cycle when we return with a Venus star point. We're also adding the midpoint, which is the 4-year pattern. So I did this animation years ago, but you get the idea of, there's 5 places in the zodiac where the retrogrades will happen. But every 4 years, that retrograde is accentuated by the opposite point, which we are coming to now with the Gemini star point superior conjunction. Okay, so again, we need these 5 let's say, 5 points. And we can see that, let's just say the last point, it's the middle point, it's the Kazemi point that we stem from, okay? So 20 degrees of Leo, where was that in our charts? We're heading to the outer point now in Gemini, 9.5 months later. And again, in 9.5 months' time, we're going to be experiencing the next Venus retrograde peaking at 2 degrees of Aries. So again, these 5 points are always activated. It's like a bee buzzing in every corner, kind of going, what's happening in this section for you right now? So these 5 points is what, you should be really kind of knowing where they are in your chart and how they connect and the story that goes through. So when Venus was retrograde in Leo, she then sort of moved forward again, and it takes 9.5 months for her to move 270 degrees through the zodiac to get to this point where she's coming to now. And then she flies past the sun and goes and makes her next retrograde. So as you can see, the Venus points in the sense are, 270 degrees forward in the zodiac every time they happen, right? Being retrograde or direct. And you can again follow that pattern endlessly. It's just so perfect. So, and then the main thing also to understand is if we're moving to a point at 14 Gemini, the next time there's a retrograde there, it will be at 11 Gemini. So we're kind of oscillating in a few degrees all the time. So therefore, it means that a star point is activated for not just one 4-year period, and sometimes not even just one 8-year period. They're actually really activated for maybe up to 20 years, because some of the points, like the Gemini one, does oscillate a bit back and forward as well. And so therefore makes it, this is, you kind of think about it, okay, like this is a period of my life where the midpoints of Gemini and in my chart are really kind of significant, and it's a little bit different for everyone. We've got to kind of follow the story. And these great graphics from AstroSeek tell us how to, let's say, watch the Venus star. And I'm not going to go through it. I urge you to either take a screen grab of this and really just trace this pattern, and you will really sort of know the mechanics of what's happening. So here we are at the outer point here, okay? And as we can see, the next time this is Venus on the other side of the sun, and in the middle here is Venus internally in between the Earth and the sun, called the retrograde. And so in 4 years' time, the retrograde will happen at this point. And 4 years ago, the retrograde happened at this point, right? So again, we're connecting this whole kind of story together, or theme of what this Gemini star point means to me. And we can do that with any of these star points. And as I was saying, go back in time, go into the future, plan things. I've planned so many things about the Venus star and my missions, let's say. So if we go here, the next star point, if I follow the orange line, I'm just going to do it once. I'm going to follow this orange line, and then we head into the next retrograde, which is Aries here, okay? And then we go out with the blue line, and then we have the outer conjunction again in Capricorn, and then we come back and it continues, all right? And then this is actually the star that is drawn, right? This is more what the star of Venus looks like when we are, drawing the pentacle, because we're going in and out. We're going from outwards to inwards, from outwards to inwards, outwards to inwards. See how it repeats inwards again from this time. So again, learn to, let's say, follow how the pattern is drawn, and the retrograde and the direct points that are reiterated every 4 years. So who's thinking, I mean, if we think about this Gemini star point, we're going back to 2020. What's happening? What was happening in 2020? We were in the middle of trying to make sense of COVID. What the heck is going on? Right? Like, what we had to relearn so many things, or it was we had so many things to reconnect about people, or being isolated, or we were all going through some kind of crisis mentally because of COVID, right? And this is very Geminian in a sense, like who do I trust? Who do I listen to? The media crazy frenzy of what was going on. Like seriously, no one can tell me that they were sane during that time, right? Trying to work out what was going on. We can think of 4 years before that when this outer point was there. What was happening? 2016. It was a year that Trump got elected. So the Gemini star point is always in the 4-year cycle of the USA elections, or happens before the USA election. So it's in that crazy frenzy time of, again, people, what the information that you're being told about who's doing what and so on. And then you can go back to 2012, and this is what you do in your own sort of life and pattern. What was going on in those timeframes for me? And then with Venus, because of an interior, what we call conjunction retrograde, and an exterior conjunction that's not retrograde, when Venus is moving at her fastest, we have two sides of Venus in so many ways. We've got a morning star and an evening star. This is, half her synodic cycle. For one full cycle, she's got two sides, evening star, morning star. And then the Greeks had a name for that, not so much as an evening star or morning star, but more as an earthy goddess, Venus Pandemos, so Venus in Taurus, maybe. Or definitely she's sitting on a bull in this picture. And then Venus Urania, or Aphrodite Urania, I should say, where Venus is in the heavenly realm. And this is exactly where she's heading to now. She's heading to the heavenly realm. And from the heavenly realm, this is where she sources the manna from heaven, or this is how I see it. Where she's closest, she's furthest away from Earth that she can be. So what's she experiencing? What's she bringing down? I always like to call it, what's the mission that we are on? What's our sort of trial that we go through as Venus is starting to move in time with the sun, and then take the sun over? There's a real kind of purpose behind this outer conjunction point that we might not really see or have seen before. But if you go back into your story, you'll go, oh my, those outer conjunction star points of Venus were probably more challenging than the retrograde, and they are to a lot of people. And so this outer conjunction point, again, I like to look at it as the heavenly star, but it is also, through a lot of traditions and shamanic traditions, known as Venus in the underworld. Venus in the underworld is when we can't see Venus in the sky, but it's through the outer conjunction where she's missing for up to 80 days in the sky and we can't see her. Whereas when she's retrograde, she's only not visible for about 8 to 10 days, depending on where you are. So the 40 days and 40 nights of a retrograde is very much related to this bigger sort of cycle of Venus behind the sun, when she's missing for a lot longer. And we know what Venus means, and I'm just kind of putting these slides in. I'm, Venus means so much. She means so much about relationships, what we attract to ourselves, how we're connecting dots, how we're connecting things together. And very much so with Venus in Gemini. What are we connecting? What do we need to reconnect? It's not a retrograde, but I still say reconnect, because there's things that come back in this pattern. It's the value of things. It's the mirror image of ourselves and what we reflect into the world. And then not forgetting the magical formulas that come with Venus, right? From, the peace sign that's made in her kind of synodic cycle, in 2D, the Fibonacci sequence that's related to the 1.6 ratio, the golden mean, and the specialness or the devotedness of wherever we, take our lives, or what's important to us, right? So again, it's really important to recognize the star as having 2 points in every point, okay? 2 points in every point that return every 4 years to give you a different perspective of the same theme. And for some of us, we might recognize that the moon does that. Like if there's a new moon at, let's say 18 Aries, right? In 4 years' time, there'll be a full moon at 18 Libra. And then in 8 years' time, there'll be a new moon again, right? It's not part of the Metonic cycle in a sense. It's another cycle of the moon. So we got to recognize Venus in these phases as well as morning star and evening star. She's very moony. We actually never see her full, right? She is never full in the sky. We don't see that part of her. And so that's a really interesting sort of part of the story when Venus goes behind the sun. What is she doing? No one, it's like, again, our kind of personal mission, and probably the most testing point, because it's like this is where we're doing it alone. This is where we learn to empower ourselves to stay strong, or to go through some kind of trial so we can learn from that. And when she comes down for the retrograde, it becomes more, this is when we implement the change that we found at this point, right? This is where we get, the inspiration or the empowerment to go, I must change that in my life, or I'm going to do this differently. And then it's during the retrograde that these things kind of come to manifest more. Okay. So again, watching the patterns in your life. So every 9.5 months, example, from Leo to Gemini, we're connecting the dots already. How is the Leo point and the Gemini point now crossing over in my life? And then the 19-month cycle, which we are in the middle of, from Leo to Aries, from Leo retrograde to Aries retrograde, 1.6 years, with the Gemini point as the halfway point. How is this whole cycle playing out in my life? And then we've got the 4-year pattern that I talked about, and the 8-year pattern that, again, reflects this theme for us. Now, how am I going for time? 5 more minutes? 10 more minutes? So again, put these 5 points in your chart and watch what's been sort of happening in your life. Now, again, so putting the story together, we can look back at the retrograde, what happened in the world, what happened in our own lives. And of course, Leo, wherever that Leo point is in our lives, it was all about, some kind of return to appreciate ourselves, or, find more joy in our lives, or creativity, or what have you. And with this Gemini evening star, that she will become the evening star after the conjunction, we are reconnecting dots. We are making connections or reconnections. We are very kind of aware of the environment we are in, or what information we're taking in, and how, let's say, a change in sort of heart and mind will change the values that we live by. So, of course, Venus is always in regard to that, right? Or I'm not listening to that anymore because, my beliefs have changed. I know Gemini is not about beliefs, but it is about what we take in, or what information we want to collect. Again, thinking about the bee. What am I collecting now that is worthwhile, or for me? And then in the world, we see a lot of whistleblowers sort of related to this theme, like McBride, Weng, Assange. I haven't got time to go into that. But in Australia, these are all people that are sort of standing out for, truth and what's hidden behind government agendas, and Weng being the guy sentenced to death by the Chinese for something that he outed 4 years ago, I think it was. And then we see with Gemini this huge sort of theme of polarity and division, or two sides, which we're seeing in the wars that are happening right now. I'm not saying that wars don't happen at any other star points, but again, we can see the focus, right? We can see the focus of the themes that are happening. And so as Jupiter goes into Gemini as well, this Jupiter in Gemini has the theme, which Dijana will talk about more, of information outed, whistleblowers, all that kind of stuff. It's very much related to the Gemini theme. So again, think about how this is, happening in your life. Sorry, and then, so this is the Leo star point, outer conjunction, Venus morning star, takes over the sun, comes out as the evening star to come back for the Aries retrograde. It's a beautiful cycle to watch. And I haven't got time to go into that, but in the Leo star point, we saw, all the, there was the Wagner coup, Prigozhin mystery, French riots, nuclear tests, the Barbenheimer craze. So really Leo line energy. And then the Gemini star point, again, all this sort of, polarities and divisions and seeing both sides of things become very prominent. So again, how's that sort of happening in your story? And then if we look back at the themes of the Venus star point, we can go right back to the transit of Venus, which was in 2004 and 2012. And I've just really quickly sort of put in a few themes there, but we can see it's got a lot to do with social media and how we connected. Okay, of course, information we take in, the truth of things, the truth in the media, social media's responsibility for propaganda and voting systems that happened, in 2016. Brexit is part of this 4-year cycle. Brexit and then the exit 4 years later, Trump's elections and, not elections. Bitcoin is part of this 4-year cycle, and it's halving. That's so Gemini, right? So it's part of this story as well. And again, I haven't got enough time to go into it, but we can see, you can write out your own little story here about the 4-year cycle and how that is, kind of presenting itself already. It doesn't, again, we're not waiting to June. And so Venus is right about to, well, we're not the 5th of April yet, when she ingresses into Aries. By the end of the month, she will be no longer visible. She's very low in the sky in the morning. And this is, again, many astrologers see, or shamanic astrologers see, that this is the part where she is rising lower in the sky, dimmer further away. We don't know where she's going. She's off to the underworld for a long time. And then, so here she's setting, and here she rises again. So if you count the dates in between there, it's 74 days that we do not see Venus for. And the work that I've done as well, we know so much about the 40 days and 40 nights of retrograde and its meaning from, Bible and history and many things that were said to be 40 days and 40 nights. But what I've found is that when Venus is moving towards her outer conjunction, she is stepping with the sun within 4 to 5 degrees, and of course closer, for 20 days before the retrograde and 20 days after. So really, this is the longest conjunction of any planet we can have in astrology, is Venus and the sun. And I don't think too many people have thought about that. So there is a, let's say a groove or a pattern that is really accentuated. So I want us to to think about not just a 40-day and 40 night retrograde pattern, but a 40-day and 40-night Venus conjunct the sun, right? It does not happen at retrograde. So what does that mean to us? It's beautiful. It's beautiful to think about that. What is my mission? It's the Venus star mission. She is moving with the sun for so long. And then I haven't got time, I think, to delineate this chart. But again, you can look at this chart and go, okay, the main points of this star point will be a stellium in Gemini, again, awareness, rethinking things, reconnecting the dots, repairing sort of tears in communication, and, oh, I must get in touch with them again. We find that during this point. It doesn't have to be a retrograde. And of course, Neptune on the edge, Marc's going to talk about that. This is all particularly related to this star point because Venus wasn't on the edge of Pisces and the Alpha and Omega point 4 years ago, right? So it makes this star point unique, right? So again, we're always putting in the unique sort of patterns for ourselves. And of course, what we want to look at, where does 15 degrees Gemini fall in our chart? How is this related to 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, and 16 years ago, and so on? And again, see the pattern, see how it's connecting the dots in your life. We do astrology so we can read patterns. We do astrology so we can grow, we can change, we can be prepared for, the time periods that are coming up. And just quickly, I'll finish with this, is in 2012, because of the Venus transit, Venus, in 2004 and 12, Venus crossed the face of the sun, and it happened at the node of Venus, of course, the north node of Venus. And we can see that here. I've got the nodal. Venus was at 1610, and Venus and the sun point were at 1544. So within 20 minutes of arc, we had the transits. Now, these transits have been getting closer to the north node of, the Gemini star point has been getting closer to the node of Uranus as well. So the north node of Uranus is included in here. And it's such a defining sort of moment for the time on Earth that we are in. Because of the transit just happened in 2012 and 2004 that ignited a new awareness on this planet that only happens every 120 years. But the last time it happened, they were on Sagittarius node, right? This time they're happening on the Gemini node. And this imprints a stamp that is not over because it happened in 2012. This imprints this Gemini star point to be very much about what we're aware of, how we're changing the, let's say, the mind of the planet big time in everything that we are connected with. And because of this connection to the node of Uranus, this is so telling about re-evaluating this AI world that we're moving into, this digital, landscape, this social media world, all to do with computers, and how much we value that and how much we want to be and continue to be part of that. So I think that's what this Gemini star point about, and it is very much related to a much bigger cycle that is the Gemini Venus transit points that we had, again, 2012. They're not over. They are still with us in this mini age that we're in of, really sort of shifting the worldview, the awareness. We can see how much that's changed through social media, through all these Geminian things over the last, let's say, 20 years even, and what that means for where we're heading and where we're going and adapting to. So with this Venus Gemini point, I really see it as like the bee to honey. What are we attracting to ourselves? Well, Venus generally is very bee-like to me. But, let's focus on the Gemini point and really notice or do the work on what we think this bee is after in this Gemini point time. And so before I go, just a reminder, CI has just launched our Time Lords magazine. You can access it through the website quite easily. So have a look at some great information and hard work that the agents have put in. And Ariel Goodman and myself, we've been working together for many years. We will be doing more work on this Venus star point Gemini conjunct the north node of Uranus, a free event that you can register through the website, through the magazine. And then we'll be doing a masterclass as we do every 9.5 months. So I hope you can join me for that if you want to know more about the information on more of the Venus star points and Gemini. Thank you. Sorry if I've gone over a bit.
No, you have. It is perfect what you did. And Julia, that I can't wait to go back over the recording and
I know
take in even more of that. No, it's wonderful. It's really, I know it's one of a number of passions astrologically, and you just shone that through, and it was really wonderful. So thank you so much. Really, really fantastic.
Well, enjoy the Venus star point, everyone. And it's a special, it's special. It doesn't have to be retrograde to be, important. Put it that way.
Absolutely. No, I was thinking, it's always good for us to come back to our own charts and learn through our experiences. I was reflecting on that as you were talking. So wonderful. That's a great start. And also a great intro for Dijana, because first of all, so thank you, Julia, very, very much. It was wonderful.
It was great. Thank you,
Dijana, welcome. Lovely. I believe this is your first OPA presentation that you are at today. So welcome. I hope you're feeling good. And I know we're all very, very ready to hear what you have to share. Just to introduce Dijana. Dijana is also in Victoria. And she is her company, Aspect Astrology, which she may share more about before she finishes her talk today. She is a practicing astrologer and teacher. She has 20, 30 years of astrological wisdom under her belt. And today she is going to share with you about the ingress of Jupiter in Gemini, which is just a breath away. And I'm very excited to hear what she has to say. I know that she is a Sagittarian sun, so Jupiter is an important part in her life as the dispositor. So I am going to say welcome, and I'm going to hand it over to you, and looking forward to the presentation. So
thank
off you
you
go.
so much, Lisa. And I really do appreciate this opportunity to be here with you all. I hope you can see my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up, Lisa, if you can? Yes. Awesome. And yeah, Julia, thank you. That was incredible, like really mind-blowing. And yeah, I'm now wanting to go back and change my whole presentation, but I won't. I'll stick with what I've got here. But that was really incredibly mind-opening, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And yeah, a natural, I guess, segue into what I'll be talking about today with Jupiter moving into Gemini. And I'll start by saying, as I began to prepare for this particular topic and was thinking about Jupiter and then Gemini, I actually did feel, funny you mentioned the bee, because I felt like a bit of a butterfly flitting from one thing to another, because there's just so much that we could actually cover with this particular transit. And it took me a while to land, which ironically, I think is very much the point, I guess. Jupiter in Gemini may have us feeling just a little bit like this in some way, a little bit all over the place. So it actually surprised me, however, that I then honed in on this particular topic regarding Jupiter's move into Gemini, because I've been really struck by that stark symbology of where we are moving towards, and just how much the time ahead is resonating with the key themes of Jupiter in Gemini. So once I knew I was going to have this incredible opportunity, I spent a lot of time thinking about Jupiter in Gemini and kept coming up with, the same recurring questions in my mind anyway. So Jupiter in Gemini will absolutely amplify our access to information like never before. But in a world, as Julia pointed out, where AI is set to become such a huge influence, and where images and voices and videos and photos can all be manipulated and doctored, and where media is, where social media is now our main source of news, and where we're increasingly in a situation where facts are not necessarily checked and the news is motivated by clickbait, the question arises, how are we actually going to discern what the truth is for us now? And so I like to think about the shift of an outer planet into new signs in themes of what kind of questions are we going to need to ask ourselves on a collective and a personal level. And for this subject, I focused on the expansion, which is Jupiter, of information and ideas and education, thinking, and of course, technology, which is Gemini, and how that's going to, potentially influence how we perceive and interact with our beliefs and our values, which is Jupiter, in what's really being heralded to be one of the biggest shifts in the use of technology that's going to permeate into our lives since the very birth of the internet. So, as we know, Jupiter, the largest planet of our solar system, takes approximately 12 years to traverse through the zodiac and spends approximately 1 year in each sign. And astrologically, Jupiter symbolizes belief and faith and the pursuit of meaning and purpose. And Jupiter encourages us to explore beyond our known boundaries. It encourages us to grow, take risks, to gain broader perspectives on life, personally and collectively. And it expands and amplifies the themes and the characters of the sign that it's actually transiting through. So Jupiter's placement in Gemini is considered, however, to be in its detriment. But the ruling planet of Gemini, Mercury, and Jupiter are connected in their mythology and in their symbology. So Mercury is indeed considered to be Jupiter's son. He served as a mediator between the gods and the mortals and facilitated communication, the flow of information between the realms. And so although Jupiter may be in detriment in Gemini, the connection, well, the way I feel about it anyway, between Jupiter and Mercury mythologically seems to suggest that there's a shared understanding and a synergy between these two planetary energies. And so they may operate on different levels, but they ultimately serve complementary purposes in pursuing knowledge and understanding. And so Gemini, ruled by Mercury, embodies communication, intellectual exploration, versatility, and adaptability themes. And Gemini fosters the growth and the development of our mental agility, our ability to exchange ideas and integrate diverse perspectives. And so Gemini represents the evolution of language and writing and various forms of communication that enables humans to connect and exchange information across distances, across cultural boundaries. And it's this kind of exchange of ideas and information, which is why Gemini is also associated with the media and information technology and the internet, which, you know, facilitates that rapid dissemination of information and the democratization of ideas. So I haven't gone into a lot of detail about the very long history of Jupiter in Gemini, but when we briefly do explore some of the key themes of Jupiter's transits through Gemini, throughout history, we note periods of intellectual exploration, technical innovation, and the proliferation of information which has sparked cultural shifts and reshaped humanity's relationship with knowledge and information and communication. I am right. I have jumped ahead a bit there, sorry. Sorry, guys, just recalibrating. So in more recent times, when Jupiter's been in Gemini, communication has really been revolutionized. And in the mid-19th century, the telegraph was invented when Jupiter was in Gemini. And during the early 60s, we saw the beginning of the information age with the advancement of computers and telecommunication and the early birth of the internet, of course. And even more recently, Jupiter transited Gemini from June 2000 to July 2001, and again from June 2012 to June 2013. And this coincided, of course, with the rise of the information age. And overall, this period has seen, you know, the rapid expansion of the internet, telecommunications, obviously social media, computer graphics, music technology, all of which have totally revolutionized the way that we live. And again, there we go. So, sorry, I'm going back one. Okay. One of the key reasons that I've landed on the themes of information and expansion around Jupiter and Gemini is also due to the backdrop of Pluto being in Aquarius and the alignment that we'll have of Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus, which is going to happen just prior to Jupiter's ingress into Gemini. So with Pluto in Aquarius as a significant umbrella, and with the alignment of Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus, as I put this talk together, at least, we have all astrologers really speaking of a time to be marked by profound change and innovation and expansion across various aspects of society, particularly in technology and innovation, and in our collective awareness and in our humanitarian pursuits. And so by thinking about this, I was really struck by what I see as overlapping themes that look set to be amplified by Jupiter's transit through Gemini. So the astrological chart on the day of the ingress, which is the 26th of May at 10:16 a.m. Australian Eastern Time, does even in itself present an intriguing alignment. So Jupiter is conjunct the Sun and Venus in Gemini and is in a harmonious trine with Pluto in Aquarius and sextile to Neptune in Pisces. And so this initial imprint time feels like it can signify an openness to new ideas and a willingness to embrace change. And this alignment could set the stage to foster, I guess, flexible thinking and compassion for potential breakthroughs and opportunities. And the trine between Jupiter and Pluto, which is exact on June the 2nd, offers the opportunity to enhance communication effectiveness, especially conveying transformative ideas. And this could foster the dissemination of information, a greater collective awareness and understanding. And I think this is very much a time to look out for influential voices or truth-sayers or whistleblowers, as Julia has mentioned, and for people that are advocating progressive change and inspiring others to take action around this time. And this initial chart invites us to ask questions, right, of ourselves and as a collective. This period may allow us to discover what new ideas or innovations could benefit our personal growth, but also our collective well-being. So we can ask, like, how can we use the fast and abundant information coming our way, especially with technologies such as AI, for good and for positive growth? So Jupiter's shift in Gemini may spark a conversation about how willing we are to actually adapt to changing circumstances and embrace new perspectives. Jupiter in Gemini wants to broaden our thinking. The combination of these energies should begin to move us away from a more conservative, risk-averse, and I guess steadfast approach to exploring new ideas and perspectives, which may have been the case when Jupiter has been in Taurus, toward a greater openness and a greater adaptability, which could hopefully foster greater acceptance and understanding and collaboration with one another. And so we could ask, could there possibly be, with Jupiter in Gemini, a more willingness to have dualistic and divergent discourse without the threat of cancel culture? The other influential astrological umbrellas include having Neptune in Pisces at least until March next year, and Saturn in Pisces until the end of May next year. And so Neptune's influence may work in a couple of ways. It could offer us the greater sensitivity to the impact that abundant information and technology booms may have on humans, which could offer us a chance to be more compassionate. Or it could leave us feeling overwhelmed, confused, or not knowing where to go, what to trust and what to believe, as we're, bombarded with these new technologies that are blurring the lines of how information is delivered and perceived and digested. And then, of course, Saturn's influence in Pisces sort of really punctuates the importance of establishing boundaries and ethical guidelines and sustainable practices in the rapidly changing technology and information landscape. Saturn reminds us that we should prioritize a cautious approach to technological innovation that prioritizes indeed holistic and inclusive long-term societal well-being over short-term gains. So Gemini's energy and themes heat up in July as Mars moves into the sign, where it will stay until September the 5th. And on August 14th, Jupiter and Mars meet up in Gemini and then make a square to Saturn on August the 19th. If Jupiter expands, Mars energizes, and together these two in Gemini could really accelerate and launch new technologies into the stratosphere with vigor and ambition. And one such example is this. If you haven't already, meet Google Gemini. Gemini is the name that Google has chosen for its own AI platform, which is set to be released to the public around the time Mars and Jupiter meet up in Gemini. So this one image, and the quote on the screen is from Google's CEO, it sums up this period and indeed is a really evocative and I thought incredibly synchronistic happening. I'm sure Google has got an astrologer on team for this one, right? So while Mars joins Jupiter in Gemini around this time, I think it's going to be a really significant period in which companies and individuals are going to be really inspired to expand their intellectual horizons, embrace new technologies, and engage in lively debates with increased confidence and perhaps a bit of extra assertiveness. And it could be a really significant period for personal intellectual curiosities and growth as well, especially for those of us with significant planets or placements in Gemini, and of course with significant planets also in the other mutable signs. But with Mars in the picture, there's also a risk of heightened assertiveness, differing perspectives, the potential for conflicts or arguments to arise. And just to give you some background, the actual Google Gemini technology is what's called multimodal, meaning that it can effectively handle and integrate various types of information such as text, code, audio, images, and video. So in other words, this system can understand, process, and combine different forms of data seamlessly. This versatility enables the system to generalize its understanding across different modalities. It allows it to operate effectively across a wide range of contexts and tasks. So it's no wonder that they've named it Gemini, right? And they claim that this Gemini AI technology is good as, if not better than, the best human experts in the 50 subject areas that they have so far tested. Meanwhile, it's Gemini, we get divergent perspectives. We've got Elon Musk, of course, already sparking contentious discussions regarding the perceived hazards of what he refers to as woke AI. And he warns about the consequences of imbuing, so us putting into artificial intelligence a heavy emphasis on enforced diversity. And he specifically called out Google Gemini, claiming that they're giving precedence to diversity initiatives. And he also states that we do need to remember that AI is only as good as the information we feed it. And he further expressed his concerns about the potential implications as AI continues to advance, and emphasizing that we do need careful consideration as AI gains more power, and he warns that such technology could become increasingly dangerous if not properly managed. And so I wanted to pull out this example of how exploring these technologies and already fiery debates around this can give us a glimpse of what's coming. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it both? What is certain is that the way that we interact with information, learning, data, images, photos, voice, computers, and indeed each other is going to change forever. And while Mars is also joining Jupiter in Gemini, they together will square Saturn in the final degrees of Pisces, particularly around the 19th of August. And around that time, there might be heightened attention paid to the dynamic between expansion and caution, optimism and pessimism with our collective consciousness and also internally within ourselves. And this aspect highlights the struggle to reconcile idealistic visions with practical realities, and it might present us with challenges in how we might legislate and govern around this new landscape. Forbes magazine described being able to tell the difference between the real and computer generated will become an increasingly valuable tool in our critical skills toolbox. So the key question arises as to how we can reconcile the visions for the future with the practical challenges of the present, both individually and collectively. And this slide just in itself is just a glimpse of the kinds of AI tech that's destined to be released all very soon. And I just thought they were all very much, you know, great examples across Gemini themes. And of course, with Mars joining Jupiter in Gemini, this period may also prompt themes around information being exaggerated and not fact-checked and manipulated, and the proliferation of fake news, for example, or indeed burnout due to information overload. So we could find ourselves immersed in conflict or disagreements associated with communication and great debate. And there's also potential here for disputes around the interpretation or the dissemination of information and the distortion of reality and its true meaning and its validity and opportunity for whistleblowing. It's all coming. And then in October, Jupiter in Gemini turns retrograde, which might, I hope, offer us an opportunity to review everything that's happened so far. So during Jupiter's retrograde period, there might be a more collective reflection on communication practices within the media industry, for example. It could lead to the reassessment of journalistic standards, editorial practices, and the use of technology to disseminate information. But there might also be a push for far greater transparency and accountability in the media. And on a personal level, of course, we might find ourselves questioning and evaluating what we believe and whether what we thought we knew we could rely on was still valid and still true. And so this retrograde period in Gemini invites us to personally question long-held beliefs and communication patterns, and to seek a really deeper understanding of our own thought processes, and to also seek opportunities for growth, particularly ways to expand our thinking and our learning. And whilst Jupiter is retrograde, it will form another square with Saturn during this period, but this might become more of a time for introspection and to gain some greater perspective. So we might see moves to set new boundaries and rules around how we use and integrate technology and manage the possible misinformation of information. Saturn here will also be retrograde for most of Jupiter's transit through Gemini. So Saturn's going to help prompt us to learn to question where our information is coming from, and to perhaps learn to fact check for ourselves and to embody an element of distrust in what information we consume. And then in early 2025, both Jupiter and Uranus turn from retrograde into direct motion. And then later in on May 22nd, just before Jupiter moves into Cancer, Jupiter will form a square aspect with the nodal axis, with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. And this alignment is going to signal an opportunity for a reassessment of past patterns and future potentials, urging us to integrate, new perspectives with a more holistic approach to knowledge and learning. So the square between Jupiter and Gemini and the lunar nodes prompts the quest for balance between analytical thinking, represented by Virgo, and intuitive wisdom, represented by Pisces. So it could really encourage us to delve into the interconnectedness of all things and the unseen forces that shape our reality. So this aspect is also going to challenge us to expand our minds while remaining grounded in practicality and advocating for like a synthesis of rationality and compassionate, holistic understanding. And I think this period might also see us embrace AI as an expansive creativity tool more and more. For example, like this video, which was made by just giving AI the right instructions and asking the right questions. So with AI, we've got to remember that virtually any question can be answered, but the real challenge lies in learning to ask the right questions, like knowing enough to know if the answers that you receive are actually correct, and knowing what questions to ask of it in the first place. And I think those sorts of themes are then going to start to integrate into our educational systems as well. And the expansion of information really could be an incredible opportunity for humanity. The opportunity for increased knowledge sharing, could lead to growth, and it's amplified in Jupiter's transits through Gemini, and especially while we have Pluto and Aquarius in the background. So advancement in communication, technology, and digital platforms really can enhance our connectivity and could be a real boom in advancing and indeed changing education for everyone as well. So how we learn may indeed become very different for the babies born today than it was for us. And learning discernment and critical thinking is going to become key. And these themes are likely to be debated during this transit. And let's also remember that Jupiter expands, but it also brings opportunity. And so we do have an opportunity here to increase the diversification of our perspectives and to hopefully increase our tolerance for diverse viewpoints. Jupiter in Gemini may offer us the chance to have dualistic conversations without the threat of being cancelled. Could we even really expand our consciousness and develop more critical thinking skills and become more tolerant of everyone's differences? That's the ideal I'm hoping for. However, we are still living in and continue to live in times where information overload already feels overwhelming, right? And it could become so much harder to discern truth from falsehood. And being aware of this potential may indeed motivate us, I hope, to do more of our own fact-checking and to develop more critical thinking skills. But it could also just lead to potentially a society that spends, more time in its own echo chamber and spreads misinformation and leading to confusion and mistrust and even greater conspiracy theories. So we've really got to try and find that ultimate Jupiter and Gemini balance, right? There's, of course, also the really ethical concerns regarding privacy and data manipulation and digital surveillance, and highlighting all of that is the importance, of the considerations that we need to develop and grow the values that help shape our society while we're doing this, which is very much what Jupiter wants, right? But on the flip side, we may be more willing and able to hold the media to account as well and to advocate for transparency and unbiased information. But what will happen is that during this transit, we are going to be discussing the importance of empowering individuals with critical thinking skills and promoting ethical use of technology. We're going to be encouraging dialogue and collaboration and advocating for integrity and accountability with the media, in legislation, in governance, which are all crucial for nurturing a resilient and thriving society. And these considerations may become essential for harnessing the potential of Jupiter's transit through Gemini to facilitate our evolutionary growth. Jupiter in Gemini promises to broaden our perspectives and expand our consciousness, enabling us to embrace diverse viewpoints, cultivate critical thinking, and encouraging us to question and encouraging us to analyze and to deepen our understanding of the world around us, which is exactly Jupiter's end game, right? And of course, as Jupiter journeys through Gemini, there's also the heightened possibility of the collective becoming more open to embracing astrology. This transit really could encourage a much broader exploration of various perspectives and alternative belief systems, and making the collective more receptive to the insights and the wisdom offered by astrology. Gemini's mutable and adaptable nature really aligns with astrological concepts and fostering an environment where, people might be more willing to engage with astrological principles for personal and collective understanding. And so with Jupiter's expansive influence in Gemini, there's much to be cautious of, but there's also some great hope for an even greater growing inclination towards seeking deeper meaning and connection, making astrology a valuable tool for navigating life's complexities and fostering collective growth and harmony. And that's about all I wanted to say or have time for. So thank you for that.
Sorry, Dijana, I had to put my fan on. I was getting so warm taking in all of this information. I needed to cool off. My goodness gracious. Like,
That was great,
yes,
Dijana.
thank you so much. Yes, that was
So well presented, so much information, so well articulated. Fantastic. Loved it.
Thank you, Marc.
absolutely.
I love how it ties into that, well, the Gemini theme, you know, with what the Venus star point in Gemini, because it only happens every 12 years that Jupiter in Gemini and the Venus star point will happen. So, you know, it's so, you know, the content that you were talking about is so relevant for this star point too.
Yeah,
So
I was thinking exactly that when you
Gemini,
were talking.
yeah.
We should have talked a bit more beforehand.
No, it's all, I mean, you can see how related it is. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
No, the synchronicity just allowed it to all flow. I think that was perfect. It was so much wonderful information. Thank you so much.
You're
I
getting
think
really
we're all
good.
going to have a lot to digest. We already, already have so much to digest. It was incredible.
Lots of good feedback, Dijana, coming up from the chat. Everyone's saying how much they enjoyed it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to introduce my dear friend Lisa now. Now, Lisa is the Australian representative for OPA. Lisa is a passionate astrologer, teacher, counsellor, and Australian bushbow practitioner with a lifelong love of astrology and related modalities. Among some of her training, Lisa has completed qualifications through astrosynthesis, master level through Stephen Forrest's astrology program. She has a diploma in counselling and group work and advanced certificates with bush flower therapies and has completed her OPA certificate. Lisa is now a tutor at the Forrest Centre for Evolutionary Astrology, where she tutors all levels within the school curriculum. Lisa coordinates unique astrological retreats, having run Stephen Forrest's apprenticeship program in both Australia and Europe, working with other international astrologers here and overseas, and taking part in various conferences as a speaker herself. She is also passionate about her Sacred Sites tour that she guides in Greece, with a maximum of 10 pilgrims exploring astrology and the great myths with the gods and goddesses. These journeys are not only insightful, but also a lot of fun, good food, and great connection. So here we go. Enjoy my dear friend Lisa.
Thank you, Marc. That's lovely. Thank you, everyone. I just sit back here and listen to, everything I've taken in so far today. And, there is just so much for all of us to grow from. And here in Australia, we are so incredibly fortunate to have, such a beautiful union and astrological tribe. So I'm very, very honoured to be part of that. So let me share my screen. And that is not my presentation. He's a little friend that visits me as my screensaver moves from place to place. So, sure. All right, so just before I start, as Marc was just sharing, I would like to talk just for a moment about two events that are occurring this year. Each year I go to Greece, and each year I try and come up with, in-depth events. I am a very Scorpionic person, and even though I'm not a Scorpio, and I like to do depth. And one of the things I am passionate about is Greece and the incredible gifts that Greece offers us as astrologers. Learning about the Greek myths and visiting the sites and embracing the gods and the goddesses. And I am very blessed and fortunate to be able to do this each year with a small group of people, where we have our own bus and we travel. Each trip has a slightly different theme. So we go to different places because Greece is a big place, and we evoke the gods and the goddesses, and we visit the sites, and we have beautiful, intimate sharings about astrology. And as Marc finished off, we have a lot of fun, as well as opportunity to step out of the busyness of life and create a very special sacred space where we can look within And that, you know, after listening to everything that we've just heard from Julija and Dijana, it makes it even more apparent to me that opportunities to create spaces where we can look within and take a step out of the busyness is actually incredibly important, even more so perhaps over the coming period. So there's all of this info is on my website, and if anyone even just wants to ask me some questions or go on and look at the brochure and see the beautiful pictures, please feel free. And if olives and feta are not your thing, maybe pizza and pasta is, because just after Greece, I am very blessed yet again to be speaking with my friend Marc Laurenson and 3 other amazing astrologers, Lynn Bell, Martin Sebastian Moritz, and Maurice Fernandez. And I realised, Marc, apparently this is the Astro Haven conferences for men whose name begin with M and women whose name begin with L. I don't know how we did that, but anyway, it's going to be wonderful. This is the where we will be holding the conference on beautiful Lake Como, and we are literally right on lake frontage in a beautiful 17th century hotel run by a family, 5th generation, amazing food, and 5 great speakers, all giving 2 presentations each. So we've got 10 presentations, 5 of us, and a forum at the end of the conference, and it's going to be only small. There is a maximum of 29 people, and we have about 8 places left in twin share rooms. But the twin share rooms are all private bathrooms, and each floor has a beautiful lounge area as well, and they're quite spacious rooms. So anyway, if you would like to know more about what we are presenting, or curious to just know more information, just as we've been listening to, sorry guys, I do not know why that is happening, because that's turned off. Please feel free to contact Marc or myself and we can give you all the information required. So that brings me to what I'm here for, which is, of course, Pluto, and Pluto in Aquarius nonetheless. Now, like Julija and Dijana, this is a huge topic, and 25 minutes feels like not even being able to scratch the surface. And as you would have heard from what Marc shared, I am a person-centered counselling astrologer. And as I have spoken today a little about Pluto this year, but of course Pluto is not just about this year. Pluto is about the next 20 years. So I have also approached this from a personal perspective. So anyway, it's it's a psychological planet. It is an unconscious planet. It is a transpersonal planet. It is a collective planet. Now, all of the above is Pluto ticking these boxes, which just in itself is telling us that it is about the generations. The generations born, apart from a small period later this year when Pluto moves back into Capricorn and then back into Aquarius, where it will continue its journey then until it completes in about 2043, 44. It is about the next generation. But it is also about the impact on the generations that are still here on this planet that carry different Plutonian imprints. But it is also very much about the psychological. Pluto wants us to look into the unconscious. And so, this is, for me, one of the really big gun players that is a shapeshifter. That's a tongue twister. A shapeshifter for society, for the generations, and for us personally. Because as we know, we all have Pluto in Aquarius transiting somewhere in our chart. And of course, society, the collective globally, as all of us as citizens of the earth are experiencing Pluto as a collective. So there are many roots and many layers to this topic. And I am launching a new YouTube channel. I say a new one. It is the first one. So it is very new. And that's going to be starting from our Aries new moon eclipse that we're having very shortly. And I definitely am going to be talking a lot more about this planet because it is very close to my heart. And I've also experienced very major Pluto transits in the last 20 years of my own life. So I feel like I've really danced with Pluto, and I hope that today I can share a little of that in a more intimate level. Also, just watching my time, Marc, please feel free to maybe give me a 5-minute wind up because Marc knows me very well, and I'm sure Julia's getting to know me, and Dijana definitely knows how I like to talk. So please let me know. Okay, so let's just reflect. I would like just for this next image I'd just like you to look at this picture, and I would like you to feel whatever it evokes within you. Because for me, when I saw this, I found it very powerful. And so I just want you to breathe it in whilst I read this little piece that I've written, which is when we call Pluto into our lives, he is not to be feared. I'm calling him he, but we'll stick with that for now. But he is an opportunity to delve deeply within ourselves, confronting our darkness, and ultimately emerging stronger, harnessing our inner power for the ultimate outcome, which is, of course, profound personal and spiritual growth. So Pluto knows that we are ready. We are ready as a society to open our arms to this energy, and we are ready on our personal journeys to hold his hand and descend into places that may not be so easy, but are requirements for our evolutionary growth. And so I think with this energy, it is with all the energies, it's very important that we feel its thrust, and we don't feel afraid, because every planet, whether it be where we've chosen to have it seated in our chart, or whether it's where we have chosen for it to show up, we are ready, and that planet is here for our best interests, because it knows we are ready to shift up a gear. So let's explore a little further, because I really want us to get to know Pluto over the first half of this presentation before we look at what else is being offered. So I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. And let's start by reflecting on two very important archetypal energies that Pluto symbolises. Now, everything I am talking about for society, for the generation, and for all of us personally. It's all relevant. So these are probably my two favourite Plutonian symbologies. I can't go past Hades, the god of the underworld. You know, something I just want to mention here in case I forget down the track, and I think one of the girls also mentioned, Julija, perhaps. Pluto absconded with Persephone, Demeter's daughter. And so when we are working with Pluto, please always consider Ceres, who is Demeter in Greek mythology, because they have a very important role to play with each other. And of course, Pluto, the god of the underworld, the gatekeeper, in charge of the descent into the darkness, into the fires, you know, this total regeneration of the soul. You know, he is a powerful force. He carries the cloak of invisibility. He asks or demands our attention. We want to sit up and we want to listen. So, you know, this is an important piece. I'm trying to build, you know, as we move into the Aquarian process. Now, of course, on the other side of this picture is Darth Vader. Now, I can't do Darth Vader impressions. I have been practicing, but it just doesn't work for me. But Darth Vader, you know, he is such a Plutonian figure, of course. He is what is it in Star Wars? I can't think of what they call him, but he is the Force, you know, he is the Dark Knight of the soul. And of course, he is Luke Skywalker's father. And Luke doesn't know that until they confront each other in battle. And I remember, you know, Darth Vader saying to Luke, apart from telling him he's his father, it's time to face your anger, Luke. And I feel that is such a profound statement for us on a Plutonian level, that it is time for us to confront and face some of the pain that may have been suppressed, that should we not allow it to be released, it can consume us. And so Darth Vader, the god of the underworld, and I'm sure many other archetypal images. I love, like the girls were saying, working with imagery. I feel it's very powerful and it taps into the heart. And as an evolutionary astrologer, I feel like heart memory, feeling memory, soul memory is so important. So let's, you know, carry these two images forward, the one of the little girl with the beautiful flower that still has the hope of life, and now these two powerful forces that we carry within us when we are embracing and evoking Pluto. So let's move from that for just a moment and just think a little bit about the statistics of Pluto, the astronomy. Now, Pluto was discovered in 1930. I just want to see if I can move this bar. No, I can't. That's okay. We know that Pluto, there is a bit of a story around Pluto being discovered. It was actually discovered at a slightly different time. It was originally seen and thought to be another star, and then a few years later, actually then discovered as a planet. I'm trying to condense because there's a lot to get through today, but let's just stick with 1930, and that with the elliptical orbit of Pluto, of course, because Pluto is a long way out, and so it has this elliptical orbit like a rugby ball, and that means it spends, you know, as little as 11 years in the sign of Scorpio and as much as 30 years in the sign of Taurus, and of course builds and, you know, ebbs and flows through the signs as it does its complete cycle. So 248 years, as I said at the very beginning, you know, all four of us are just about ready for our Pluto return. And yeah, so it's a pretty powerful time. Now, Pluto has 5 moons. And I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing them correctly. Is it Charon or Charon? I hear different pronunciations. Styx, Nix, Kerberos, and Hydra or Hydra. And Pluto's surface, and this I actually didn't know when I was doing a bit of research, is very cold would be an understatement. Let's say it can drop to below minus 220 degrees Celsius. The coldest weather I've ever been is minus 22, and that was just like far too much for me. So that's a pretty cold surface. And Pluto is situated out in the always mispronounce this, Kuiper belt, which is a region just outside of our solar system. And, you know, we've all talked about it being demoted astronomically, but astrologically, there is nothing to demote about Pluto. So just a few little pieces of information. Now, just going to move this. Pluto, I just want to go over a few key words to begin with, because these pieces, you know, words are very important, but when we really reflect on what each of these words mean, society is being asked to make some pretty important breakthroughs over the coming 20 years. And each of these words are like roots. And they are intertwined, as I said, in society, in the generation coming into today, and as well as in our personal stories. And just in relation to our personal stories, we are all going to have, as I said, Pluto in Aquarius somewhere in our chart. And we are all going to, hopefully, living long, healthy lives, experience Pluto squares and Pluto crossings from one house to the next, and Pluto in certain places in our solar return, and progressed planets coming up to Pluto, etc., etc. So even though Pluto is only ever going to transition through a small part of our chart in the big picture, it is going to evoke many pieces. And society, of course, are also looking at all of these themes right now. So just to pick a few of the words that jump out at me, certainly trust, trust, truth, and trauma. What are we all experiencing as a collective right now in relation to the traumas that are going on in our world? And I don't watch the news. I still manage to know about everything that is going on. I also have a mother that watches every news, and she always tells me what is going on. But I don't watch it because I am a very strong empath, and I know enough through my phone, and I try and do lots of rituals to send energy out. But, the traumas that are going on, the abuse that is going on in the world today, we are all experiencing and feeling that it is affecting all of us. So how can we learn to tap into the truth and redevelop our trust in making these very, very, very important changes that we are all part of? Whether we are 5 years old or 95 years old, every single one of us on this planet is energetically contributing to the collective. And so, how can we work with this energy? How can we work with the loss and grief that Pluto can bring to the surface for us to confront? Because I think there's a lot of loss and grief going on at the moment. And I'm not I'm a Sagittarian sun. And as I said a few minutes ago, I believe that every piece, all of these cycles, everything the girls have talked about so far, what Marc is going to talk about shortly, they are all intrinsically designed by the cosmos. And that's pretty unbelievable when we start to think on this level. But I'm not about it being negative. Things need to die off, because when something dies off, there's an opportunity for something new to be planted and a regeneration of new life. So how are we able to work with this as humans living together on a planet? And, what renewal can come from it? Like this beautiful picture, and, we think about the phoenix rising from the ashes. How can we together, join forces? Because Pluto in Aquarius is about the unity of us as a collective, and really reclaiming something very important, not just for us on our personal journeys, not just for our generations, not just for society, but for Mother Earth. This is such an incredibly important time for all of us to be living in. So, we have a job to do. We're all here at this moment in time for a reason. And so how can, Pluto is a catalyst, a catalyst for change. And we are change makers. And I think that is very exciting. It is about metamorphosis. I love the story of, when I think about metamorphosis, and I think about the butterfly and transformation, and that beautiful story of the butterfly flapping its wings, because it has to flap its wings so it can break out of the chrysalis and come out and be a beautiful butterfly for such a short period of time. And the story of the little boy that saw the challenge of the butterfly and opened up the chrysalis so that the butterfly could come out. But of course, the butterfly died because it didn't have to do the work and the challenge to release itself, because someone with heart and love did it for them. But, you know, I just even think about that, you know, the symbols that speak to us, you know. So just to talk about a couple more of these words, you know, it is about confronting. Pluto wants us to confront. It wants us to probe and to penetrate. It wants us to work with themes of the underworld and taboos, because someone has to do it. You know, we can't all shy away from the work that is to be done that is maybe not so easy to confront. You know, it wants to strengthen us. Pluto wants to strengthen us. So, you know, this is an incredible time. There's lots of words that I've put there, but, you know, these are just some. And I guess ultimately to become autonomous, but together in a united way that is, you know, going to heal the earth and grow us into the future of humanity, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and doing that work for those that have gone before us. So, you know, it's a big, big time. So now my screen does not want to move. So, there we go. So I had to put this little image in because, you know, I wanted to lift the mood a little bit now. It's certainly not about doom and gloom. It's about empowerment. But Pluto, you know, Pluto is in this picture going, what am I going to do with all of this? So I've just put a few questions for reflection up here. And I do also want to say, and I'm sorry, I actually meant to check in with everybody else, Marc and Julija and Dijana, but I will leave it to them to share if they are happy to or not. But I'm certainly happy to share this PowerPoint. I can gather them up, those that wish to share, and get them to everyone, or we can share them individually. But anyway, we can work that out if you would like these slides. Sometimes it's good to go back over them, even though I know you'll have the recording. So what is it that Pluto is asking us, society and personally? So I had a bit of a think about this because I really wanted to come up with some questions that perhaps after this presentation in the weeks to come, because I think all the information you will be receiving will definitely absorb over the coming weeks. But just some questions for us to reflect on. I didn't want to forget them, so I've written them here. So in what way are we looking to take back our power? For change to occur, we first have to confront something. So what are we asking or looking to confront? Where in life do we need to descend and face the darkness? And, you know, the darkness is not a bad thing, because to me, you know, if we were to all go blind, which Lord forbid, but when we are blind or in the dark, all of our other senses pick up. And so to go into the darkness means that suddenly we can smell much more and hear much better. And, you know, our senses are heightened in all other ways. So going into the darkness is an elevation of all parts of who we are. What truths are we now ready to be honest about? And I think that's a super important one, because as humans living here together, and I often think about that. I have family all over the world, and, you know, I think, you know, as I go to bed, my dad's getting up, and all those people in the Northern Hemisphere are living their lives, and here am I in my little world, and yet we're all connected. So, you know, facing some truths about where we have come to as a nation, as a global force, and what are we actually going to do about it? That's a good question. And where are we shedding our skin? Now, come on, slide. Just a couple of others. I love to think about Pluto as the archaeologist of the zodiac, because Pluto is about excavation, as is archaeology. And often when I'm in Greece on these trips, you know, I'm lucky enough to go to a site where they're actually on a dig, and I go and watch them, and like they're uncovering like all this other world that's been inhabited by other people. And it's just incredible to be in that space. And so, I feel like Pluto in Aquarius is offering us opportunities to excavate something. But of course, on a personal level, very much so. Where is your personal dig taking place? What is it that you are wanting to bring from the deeply buried parts of yourself or of society or of humanity out into the consciousness, dusting it off, bringing it into the light, recognizing it? That's what Pluto wants of us. And, certainly in an Aquarius, it is, as I'll talk about in a minute, it is really about waking us up. So what patterns are needing to regenerate? What are our deepest fears? I'm just going to move a little bit quicker because I know Marc's going to tell me before I know it that I have to hurry up. What must first die off so that a new birth can occur? And what's my ability to confront the emotional shadow issues of life? Again, as I said, this is right across the board. So we'll leave Pluto thinking over that, and we'll move on to the next slide. Pluto in Aquarius. Let's just see, now some of this is, of course, already occurred. Pluto first moved into Aquarius back in March of 23, and then back into Capricorn in June of 23. And then, of course, this year in January moved into Aquarius, where it will be until September. And it will make a very final bid Capricorn goodbye. And in November of this year, come back to really begin its passage. I mean, it has already begun, but I think this final retrograde motion into Capricorn allows Pluto to really say a fond farewell, I'd like to say. It's going to be an interesting time. Pluto's been in Capricorn for a long time, and we're going from Earth, thinking about excavation, thinking about mining, thinking about infrastructures, thinking about stock exchanges, thinking about corporate companies, thinking about so many things that Pluto of an earthy nature has been excavating over the past 16 years. And now, of course, it will take one last look at everything that has been broken down and is being rebuilt as it enters Aquarius. And there it will be until March of 2043, which is pretty confronting, because as we get older and then we think about 2043, like, wow. So this is now the beginning of this period. So let's now understand a little bit more about Aquarius energy.
5 minutes, Lisa.
Oh my God. Okay. It might need to maybe be 10. Tell me when it's another 5 minutes, Marc, and I'll pick up the pace. Thank you. So let me just bring all of this up. So Aquarian energy. Now, I am very fortunate. I have living color motion picture Aquarian energy in my life, because my youngest child is born in 1999, when there was a massive stellium in Aquarius, which includes his sun, moon, south node, and a gamut of other planets. So I see it every day and I love it because he teaches me so much. But we have, the rebel, the humanitarian, the revolutionary. We have a quest for breaking barriers and renewing our independence, and of course, freeing ourselves from restrictions, and recognizing that Aquarius, is about groupthink and bringing the power back to the people as a collective. Aquarian energy loves to push the boundaries, loves to go against the flow, doesn't want to accept the rules, loves to forge new innovative ways forward and speak their truth, because to speak their truth and walk a lonelier path is a much, much more exciting venture than having to be modified and fall into line and not really say what you think, which of course COVID was just such an amazing example of exactly that Aquarian nature. We are all equal. That's one of the things I love about this energy. You know, whether I am the king or whether I am the man on the street that has no home, we are all equal. And that is very important, equality. Of course, it is also about claiming one's quirky approach, owning one's differences, embracing our marginality, and elevating our perspectives to break new ground. And breakthroughs sometimes mean that we have to be more creative, we need different perspectives, we need to tap into our brilliance, we need to be unconventional with our ideas. And hopefully, if we are getting all of that right, then we will claim our free spirit and commit to making an impact on society, the world at large, and our personal journeys. So that's a very, sorry, Aquarius, we'll speed through that one. So, sorry, I don't know why my slides want me to tap them so many times. Hold on, there we go. So let's just very quickly, I'll bring all of this up. Look back at when Pluto was in Aquarius last. Now, lots of things happened when Pluto was in Aquarius last, but here are just a few of them. And I'm going to just condense the first three. You know, the revolutions. It was a period of revolution. Now, of course, revolution can be a little radical and it definitely can shock us, but ultimately, it is about making major changes. And the American, French, and industrial revolutions all happened in the period that Pluto was in Aquarius last. And the Age of Enlightenment, which was, of course, a focus of looking at reason and science and individual rights and philosophies, etc., etc. So it was a great period for that. Now, a little statistic I hadn't recognised, but do now, is that it was about the ending of slave trade. That occurred during the Pluto in Aquarius period. Fantastic. The founding of the US Constitution, and of course, the discovery of the ruling planet of Aquarius, which is Uranus. So, you know, all of this material that we are all talking about, you know, we could all do a 1 day or 2 day workshop on. So there's a lot for us to take in, but, you know, it's amazing, you know, thinking about what's going on in the planet now. We've only just really, you know, thinking about the space shuttle on re-entry. We've only just really re-entered Pluto and Aquarius, and look at everything that's already occurring. So to sum this up, sorry, Marc, there we go. It is time. I will read this just because of time. Because of time, I will read this to be faster. It is time. It is time for intense social change, innovation, and the rise of new ideologies and real progress so that we can together create social change, bringing the power back to the people and continuing to make positive impact on the masses and the world at large. You know, I am a Sagittarian. I am very positive this can happen, and we are ready for the next revolution. So let's ascend together, joining forces to create a new awakening. And I love this picture. It just feels very Pluto and Aquarius to me. And when I sat down and thought about how do I sum this up in a paragraph, you know, I just feel like it really is about a new awakening. So on a personal level, I'm so sorry to hurry this, but I know I need to. On a personal level, where in life are you ready to look at the truth within and trust enough that it is safe to delve deeply into the unknown, locked away pieces of yourself, like this young boy? Now, again, I'm saying I am talking about everything. You know, where are we as a collective willing to trust enough to look and delve? Where are we as individuals You know, if we have Pluto touching something of a personal nature, as in, you know, we have Pluto on our moon, or Pluto square our moon, or Pluto on our ascendant, or so on, or so on. That is something we have asked for on a personal level, that is part of our soul contract. But of course, collectively and from a community masses basis, Pluto in Aquarius is wanting us to look into a lot of these locked away hidden pieces that, you know, need to come back out into the light for us together to really work through. Just to, you know, finish up, Pluto in, oh guys, sorry, hold on, I have to go back. Pluto in Aquarius, sorry, everywhere I put the little video seems to be exactly where the next slide needs me to look. Pluto in Aquarius through the houses. Now, obviously, I'm going to make this incredibly quick. I'm going to just introduce it in a couple of words for each segment so that you can go away and think about it. But I ask this: what stage is ready for a new set? As Pluto in Aquarius not only wakes up humanity and asks for a revolution of, you know, a new dawning of reclaiming our power and digging deep and finding the truth that we all need to work with, but where in our personal journeys is Pluto in Aquarius? So, of course, as I said, this is just a very brief. Again, this could be a whole couple of days, but Pluto in Aquarius, as it moves through our charts, I just wanted to share this because the first house, the fifth house, and the ninth house they are houses of life. And houses of life relate to the fire signs, which are, of course, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And so if you have Pluto moving through one of these houses, if you have Pluto, you know, crossing your ascendant, which is obviously another whole topic, but if you have Pluto moving through your first house, I suppose I could say if you have seated Pluto in your first house, but thinking about it in Aquarius as it transits, that's something that you have asked to show up for right now in your contract. So what is it that you are asking to dig deeply into and find new truth about who you are and really transform, reacquainting yourself with yourself? Because it is time for a rebirth of your personality. And if you have Pluto in the fifth house, you know, I also meant to just say fire houses, you know, houses of life are about life force, and they are going to energize whatever we have. And Pluto in Aquarius, you know, the dawning of the awakening of something very new and very innovative. You know, so if in the fifth house, you know, whereabouts are you being asked to open your heart and fill your cup with more joy, that you can express your truest sense of self and approve of it from your heart without the acknowledgement of anyone else, as you find more love around your creativity and your self-expression. And should you have Pluto in your ninth house in Aquarius, you know, what is waking up? What is asking to be challenged in relation to your belief systems or your philosophies? Or maybe you carry imprints of being what is it called when you're an immigrant and you move? I can't think of the word, but anyway, maybe there's all sorts of imprints there. How do you find higher ground? Because the ninth house for me is definitely about getting a higher perspective. And with Aquarius, you know, let's find new alternative ways of seeing things. So that could be just some of what's on offer. Earth houses, 2nd, 6th, and 10th, houses of substance, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. You know, all these houses are, you know, I actually love the word substance because substance is about making something real. And so what is it that you're being asked to make real? What is it that you are asking to get more secure in? Because Earth is about security. How are you asking to change on a radical new level your relationship with money, or your ability to know your worth, or to know that you are lovable and worthy of exactly what is being given to you. Or in the 6th house, what skills are you needing to regenerate and redevelop that give the community and humanity that skills that other people want? How are you looking to develop your health and well-being in a way that, is there something that you have to face in the dark so that you can have a renewal here? Or in the 10th house, what is your mission? What is your mission in the world? Because Pluto will take you and plummet you to the depths just as easily as it will take you and push you to your highest place. And just when you think that you're at the top of that mountain, you will be pulled back down again to address something. So your place as an authority figure and how the world see you may be some of what Pluto in the 10th house is going to offer you. In the air houses of relationships, 3rd, 7th, and 11th, we need other people. These houses are about relating, and they are very much about what is changing in your mind. How are you waking up to your new ideas? What is happening in your relationships? Are they equal? Is there trust that needs to be revisited? Are you codependent? Do you lose yourself in relationships where Pluto is coming in to say, you need to reclaim your power, girl or boy? That could be part of the Pluto 7th house journey. And of course, in the 11th house, Pluto in Aquarius, it's not the natural house, but it is in Aquarius, which is a natural lean into the 11th. So in what way is groupthink not acceptable for you anymore? In what way have you recognized that you have been taken off your journey and your life direction needs to come back on path? Because I always believe the 11th house is very much about my future, amongst other things. And finally, the water houses, also traditionally or old texts called houses of endings. I would prefer to say houses of completion, but they are about the soul of the family, amidst other things. They are a very deeply psychological, emotional complexity houses. And if you have Pluto moving through your 4th house in Aquarius, there is some what family hand-me-downs or attributes or childhood memories are you being asked to give back and let go and renew? How are you looking to find a new image of yourself from the inside out? In the 8th house, of course, Pluto is very comfortable, and I have Pluto in the 8th house ruling my midheaven. If you are all wondering why am I going into so much depth and running over time, that could be part of the reason. But Pluto in the 8th house is about the redevelopment of our trust factor. It's about looking into the soul, looking into the eyes of a soul, and trusting that we can show all parts of ourselves and know that that person will still stay and they won't go anywhere. And in Aquarius, it is about the liberation of that. And in the 12th house, perhaps it's a great time to do a family tree, or perhaps there are secrets in the family that now need to be broken, that you are now ready to work with. And of course, have a total spiritual awakening and transformation and rebirth. There is so much I would love to continue to say, but I'm going to leave it on this last slide, which are wise words from someone I loved as a child, which is Winnie the Pooh. And here we have Piglet and Pooh walking down their very well-known track, and Piglet says to Pooh, "What is the bravest thing you have ever asked, Pooh?" And Pooh replies, "Help," said Pooh. And I thought that was such a beautiful reflection to end on. So I'm going to say thank you so much. I am very grateful to be here. I am sorry I went over time, and I hope that what I've shared today has given you a lot to reflect on, and I thank you all very, very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
you very much. There's so much in that, isn't there? That's a mini course in itself.
Absolutely, it is a mini course in itself.
Yeah. Trying to squeeze it into a short period of time is very, very challenging.
Yes. Thank you, Marc. So Thank you, everybody. All right, I will read. Sorry, Mark.
Lots
What have
of
I
really
done?
positive stuff coming up for you, Lise.
Hold on.
Everyone
Oh,
saying
lovely.
great
Thank
wisdom
you.
and how right on it all was.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As I said, it's so much. Why is it doing that, Mark? Why am I not stopping sharing? Hold on.
I've stopped sharing on my screen.
It stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stopped here.
That's all right. I just come back to the screen. That's great. So it is now, and we have time, Mark. So run your time. We're good. It's okay. It is now my great pleasure, and it feels really right. I mean, we picked an order that we were going to run today. Oh, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your kind words. I don't know how we came up with picking it, but it just feels so synchronistically perfect because now we flow into the oceans and the rivers of Neptune. And that feels like such a beautiful place to complete our journeys today. And I will read Marc's bio because I don't want to leave anything out. And he brings so much to our astrological world. So, of course, we start with knowing he is the creator and principal of the Sydney Astrology School. And that was commenced in 2007, going online and international in 2017. He is an accredited astrologer with the Federation of Australian Astrologers and, of course, has a thriving consultation business. He would describe his astrology as a combination of evolutionary with a psychological bent, and his goal, which I think we could all share today, and I love that you've mentioned this, is about empowering people and guiding them towards a more fulfilling life. Marc is a very popular speaker all over the world and also part of Breaking Down the Borders online conferences, Synchronicity University, and the London School of Astrology. He's written many, many publications, and I am very honoured to call him my friend. And I hand it over to you, Marc. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for that lovely intro, even though it is my bio.
Oh, well, it is your bio, but
Thank
it's
you,
all
but
true.
it was relayed beautifully from you. So I'm going to share my screen, everybody. So can you see that okay, Lise?
Absolutely can do.
Great.
Yep. Beautiful.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody. So I'm going to be talking about Neptune at its final degree. We know that Neptune is going to be moving into Aries next year, but it's going to be popping in and out of this 29-degree area for most of this year and into next year as well, okay? And I just wanted to talk about what that could actually mean, because the 29 degrees is what's called the anaretic degree, okay? Now, the anaretic degree is the final degree of a sign, and it's a very sensitive degree. It's a very intense degree, and it seems to be more intense with the mutable signs, because the mutable signs are actually ending the seasons. And here we have it in the, well, you could call it the last mutable sign, being Pisces. So we're kind of looking at the end of the end here. So I love this image of this girl that's kind of at one with the ocean. It feels like she's actually merged in with the flow of what's going on here. There's no division between her and the ocean. And of course, Neptune has got this flavor about it. Neptune is our oneness with life. It really is. But as humans, we find it quite challenging to do that. And so we often go down the other road. We often dissociate. We often disconnect quite a bit. And so there's going to be a merging of those two things happening as it comes up to 29 degrees of Pisces. We're going to be going through a feeling of trying in our own way to merge with life. Then on another level, we're feeling, probably through fear, to dissociate even more and to pull ourselves away even more. I'll get into what I mean by that as we get further into the talk. So here are the dates Now, Neptune moved into Pisces way back in 2011, 2012, okay? So it's been in Pisces for that long. Now, it's going to be staying around 29 degrees of Pisces from May 2nd or 3rd to September 2nd or 3rd. It's going to be at the 29 degree mark. It retros back and then re-enters Pisces again at 29 degrees Pisces again, March 3rd, 4th to March 29, 30 of next year, 2025. And that's when it starts to ingress into Aries, okay? Then it retros back into Pisces again in October 20 to 21, 2025 to January 26, 27, 2026. And then it goes into Aries for good after that. So they're the dates of the anaretic degree of Pisces, okay? So here are some keywords for the anaretic degree. Some keywords are completion, resolution, culmination, finality, climax, release, fate, and karma. Now, I'm going to be talking more on a personal level than on a collective level, though I'm going to talk a little bit about something collective, but I'm talking about it more on a personal level. So when I put down fate and karma, I thought I'm going to have to explain what that means because they're words. And unless you know what karma it really is, it actually just sounds like a buzzword, doesn't it? But karma is not like you've done something bad, you're going to get something bad. You've done something good, you're going to get something good. I'm not talking about that kind of karma. I'm talking about the karma of collective energy. And at 29 degrees, at the anaretic degree, everything comes to a head. So everything's been collected up until 29 degrees. And so it's about to reap what it sows kind of thing. It's almost like the energy and the impact of the energy and the feeling of everything that's been gathered over time has got to its end point here. And so karma is going to be a little bit just like a cause and effect kind of thing. It's going to have a feeling of an effect that bounces back over the collective energy of what I would say over the last 13, 14 years. It feels very much like something is going to come to a head. The bubble is going to burst in some kind of way. There's going to be a big wake-up call for a lot of people, I imagine, during this particular period of time. And I want to say in a good way. I think a lot of people might be taken aback or surprised or might want to fight it. But I feel it's going to be good for most of us. I think people who are in tune are going to really reap the benefits from this. I think that that there will be something like a feeling of a dam bursting in a way, and possibly in a way that's going to relieve something. Okay. So 29 Pisces, the end of the end here. Now we know that the zodiac doesn't really have an end. Aries follows Pisces. We know that. But, when we're thinking about Pisces or we're thinking about Neptune, we're thinking about a dissipating energy. We're thinking about an energy of dissolving, aren't we? And so there's going to be that. There's going to be a need to dissolve something, a need to let go of something, a need to release something. And I want to say, with Neptune energy, what we do with Neptune energy a lot of the time is we numb ourselves with it. We don't really want to go there. It's kind of frightening to go into Neptune territory because it means we have to let go of ourselves in Neptune land and come into oneness with something beyond ourselves. And so I want to say that we kind of live in a dream. We kind of live in our own little kind of hallucination. We might want to say we even lie to ourselves, and I want to say that this is just to protect ourselves. This is just to get through life. It's kind of like, la, 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 la. All this stuff is going on around us. And there could be some really dramatic stuff going on around us. But we kind of anesthetize ourselves. And so I want to say that this period of time at 29 Pisces could be the melting of that, the melting of our dream or the melting of our illusion or the melting of our personal lies. And when I'm talking about personal lies, I'm not talking about, people who are out to cheat and in a bad way. I'm just talking about what we talk ourselves into. There'll be the melting of that. And for a lot of us, I believe there's going to be ultimate clarity and insight happening at this particular time. And what I mean by this is a lot of people who talk about having out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, they will say that when they're in the other dimension, everything is crystal clear. The answer to everything is so precise and so clear. There is no guesswork. There is no confusion whatsoever. So I want to say, when we really get to Neptune, which is our insight or our intuition, it's as clear as a bell. So I think a lot of people at 29 Pisces might actually come into a place where penny drops, where you get, I can see it for what it is now, because kind of like the fog lifts, that feeling. It's almost like a feeling of everything that was confusing now all of a sudden makes sense. So it could be a little bit of that kind of stuff for some people. Now, as I said, a lot of people are going to get very, very frightened at this stage. 29 degrees of a sign makes people scared. You hear a lot of people talk about anxiety. It's like an anxious degree. Something is happening. I've got to get it done. I've got to get it fixed. I've got to do something about it. That comes into it. But there is a fear of letting go. There is a fear of releasing. Because for us, what's happening here really is to become spiritually naked. And to become spiritually naked is going to be different for everybody. But it is about truth, it is about soul truth or spirit truth. It's that feeling of who am I beyond myself? And why am I here on the level of what my soul wants me to do? And am I in alignment with that kind of stuff? Is my life in alignment with what makes my heart or my soul sing? And so going to that place for a lot of people is a scary place, because, as I said, there's a lot of stuff that we want to hold on to. We're very, very attached. The humans are very attached. We don't like change. We don't want to give away any of ourselves. We hang on to life, with grim death. We have all that kind of stuff. And so this 29 degree could cause a lot of unrest. It could, notice a lot of people actually might get quite aggressive over this period of time. And so I want to say that there'll be a lot of fight back over this feeling of things possibly being pulled away from you in some way. So the best way to find out about this period of time is to go back to when it last happened. So this is when it last happened. It takes 165 years, give or take, for Neptune to go through a sign, not to go through a sign, sorry, to get back to the sign. Again, 165-year cycle. It takes roughly 14 years to go through a sign. So the last time was back in 1860, 1861. Okay. And this was the time Abraham Lincoln got elected president. And of course, he was the president that put up the idea of abolishing slavery. Actually, his first idea was just to stop the slavery going into other states. That was his first idea. But of course, it became even bigger than that. Okay. And so you got Neptune here. You got Neptune, especially in Pisces here, because Neptune is the rescuer. It looks after the underdog. Neptune is that feeling of martyrdom and sacrifice that comes into this. So you can see how the slavery and how Abraham Lincoln wanted to do something about that, plus a lot of other Americans, of course, on his side. And of course, it created the American Civil War. And so this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the unrest that comes with some kind of change of something being pulled away from people, okay? So on April 12, 1861, with Neptune at 2956 of Pisces, the Confederate forces fired on Port Sumter. Look at right at the very end of the end of the end of the degree, 29 degrees Pisces. 2 days later, on April 14, Neptune ingressed into Aries and the Civil War started. So it was a bloody 4-year war that started at the very end of Pisces at the beginning of Aries. So it was all Neptunian because the Neptunian was a Neptunian idea to free slaves and integrate them back into society as everyday people. But there was a lot of unrest. There was a lot of people that didn't like that idea. And of course, as I said, the aggression started. Now, this is so interesting because America is going into their president, their vote at the end of the year, aren't they? They're going into their next election at the end of the year. Isn't this interesting how Neptune will be at 29 Pisces, or pretty close to it, when they're doing that? So last time this happened, didn't Trump say something about it's going to be a bloodbath if I don't get in? Is it reminding you of something? Is it reminding you of the picture we're looking at the moment? Interesting, isn't it? So there's a build-up that happens here, and Neptune in Pisces has no boundary whatsoever. None. There's no boundary with Neptune in Pisces. So a build-up with no boundary, that's a bit of a thing, isn't it? You know, when you think about that, you think, wow, what's gonna rein it in? What's gonna hold it in? So do we need to do this? Do we need to fence something up in our lives? Do we need to create our own boundaries around what's going on here? Because it can get out of hand. It can totally get out of hand. And we need to, in our own way, in our own lives, and I'm talking on a personal level, to be able to try to fence in what it is. And when I say fence in what it is, I want to say give it a purpose, give it an intention, give it a direction, give it somewhere to go. You know, Saturnize it in a way, pull it in. It's kind of like give it a path of sorts. And I feel that would really, really help the Neptune in Pisces energy in us, because it would feel in a way like it's got a mission in itself. Otherwise, it could actually just be a loose cannon kind of energy. It can be an energy that's just firing around all over the place with absolutely nowhere to go. So in our personal lives, we really do need to come into that understanding. Another way of fencing is to really come into a place of our intuitive self, really listen to our inner voice, listen to the guidance, because Neptune in Pisces is going to be always talking to us from the inside out, always. So if we listen to that and we understand that that's on our side, that's a really good way to keep it on track as well. So here is a part of a chart of a lady that I did a reading for just recently. She has Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. This is the transit that she's just about to have. And it's about to square her moon at 29 degrees Gemini, okay? So if you have aspects at 29 degrees in your natal chart, take heed, because particularly hard aspects, you'll get from 29 degrees of the mutable planets. Have a good look at what's going on with those. So if you've got aspects, there is a releasing, a finalizing, a resolving, a detaching, an internalizing. And when I say an internalizing, you kind of have to go inward for your answers. Reflecting and atoning. Atoning is a feeling for me of coming into a nice, comfortable, at ease place with coming into the flow of what's going on. Understanding exactly what's going on is supposed to be happening, and I need to be able to become comfortable with it as quickly as I can rather than fighting it. Now, this lady's son, her only son, has left home and is going to England to work, okay? And she's having a hard time with it because she's an empty nester. She'll be an empty nester. He hasn't gone yet, but he is going. So she'll be an empty nester, and she's having a really, really hard time with it. And so, as you can see, she's got a strong fourth house sun Chiron as well, but I'm not going to go into that because I'm going to go into a reading otherwise. So I've got to keep it contained. But can you see how Neptune is asking her to let go of her moon in the fifth house? Let it go, release it, allow it to do its thing, and she's going to, in her own way, it's going through a second. So her sense of security, her sense of safety is at risk here. She also is very talented. She also is very gifted, with photography. She's a great photographer. And she's looking at new ways of being able to bring that into her life as well. And I'm thinking that, I'm not going to say it's her last chance because it's not her last chance, but I think everything's coming to the pointy end with that. It feels like she's been doing it for a really long time. And she's never really found a way of being able to put it into anything that goes anywhere. And it feels very much like that. Coming from the second house makes me feel like she wants to, maybe make a bit of money out of it, or she wants to use it or materialize it or put it into some kind of form. But it's Neptune, which is always going to be part of the artistic, creative side of who she is. And the moon's in the fifth, which is the creative house. It's the Leo house. It's a house of self-expression. So you can see how her Neptune coming up to 29 is hitting her in two very, very different ways, but saying pretty much the same thing. There's a release or a letting go of her child on one level, and on another level, there's a feeling of releasing or letting go of her old way of doing her photography. And it feels like the second house is always going to be about worth, self-worth and self-value. So she feels very much like she needs to come into a much more spiritually guided place in that area, to allow it to take form, allow it to do what it needs to do to help build up her self-value and self-worth. Let it happen more organically. I feel that that's probably going to help her a lot. We all have Neptune square Neptune in our early 40s, okay? It's a midlife transit that we all go through. Now, I've actually done a whole webinar just on this particular transit, but I'm not going to be doing that. But I'm just talking about people who've got Neptune at 29 degrees of Sagittarius getting their Neptune square Neptune from 29 degrees of Pisces. So Neptune square Neptune is a midlife transit where we hit the intermission of life. And I feel that this is a big time of having to go through some kind of change of detaching and letting go of the past version of yourself. And as I said, we kind of talk ourselves into being something we're kind of not. And this is really a major wake-up call. And I feel that this person, now this isn't a person, this is just a chart that I put up just to give you an example. I feel that if this was a person's chart, I feel that this person would be having a major wake-up call for sure. Neptune in the 12th house can be beautiful. When it's played well, it's so, so beautiful. But it can also live in its own dreamland. It can also dissociate. It can also be very addictive. It can be everything to keep away from that. And so here we have Neptune in the third house, which is, as we know, is the Gemini house, which is always going to be about what you see. The third house is what's there around you. The third house is what's truthful, what's logical, what's rational. It just takes in the information. It just sees the information for what it is. And so here we have somebody who may kind of be a little bit distant from the reality of something. And it feels very much like there's going to be some kind of major, what I would call spiritual reality, hitting them right between the eyes. They could actually get into more any third house kind of stuff. They could actually get into study. They could actually get into writing. They could get into teaching. They can get into a lot of third house stuff, maybe stuff to do with their family, particularly siblings and close relatives might come into this in some kind of way as well. But I really think that this will really open their eyes. This will open their eyes to what's really going on. And I want to say this could be a real good turning point for this person to turn towards a more spiritual way of life. And I'm not talking about, a spiritual way of life in going down a traditional spiritual path, but just seeing life through a more heart-centered, more soulful, more intuitive lens. I think that's probably what I mean. Yeah. So if you don't have anything at 29 degrees of planets, 29 degrees of the sign in your chart, then just have a look at the house that 29 degrees of Pisces will be and 0 degrees of Aries will be. Because this is the beginning and the end of the zodiac, okay? And the beginning and the end of the zodiac is going to land in a house. And so whatever house it's in will go through a finalizing and a reboot of sorts, okay? So over this period of time, particularly this year, and as it moves into Aries next year, the house will go through I want to say, it'll feel a little tiny bit like a coming to the end of a particular way of doing something. It feels like if you've been, in the 10th house, for instance, if you've been climbing a mountain and you've been heading towards something and your career's heading in a particular direction or whatever, it might feel like you've been on autopilot for a long period of time. You know that feeling? That feeling of just going through the motions? Neptune could have been just part of that. It could have been just part of dissociating yourself a little bit from what's really going on. And then that whole idea of the 29 degree Pisces and the 0 degrees Aries could actually be, a rocket up your bum. It really could be. It could be that feeling of, whoa, this shot of a gun right inside and really, really getting you moving, getting you going. So whatever house it's going to be in, have a good look at what that house means to you and have a good look at how you might be autopiloting that particular house for a while. You might be, in a more in tune people might be getting the most out of it, on the level of becoming spiritually attuned with that house, which would be really good. But that shift into Aries is going to be as I said, is going to be a major thrust of energy into something brand new for you. So just take that into account. Just be aware of that.
Just letting you know we're coming up for time when you're ready, Marc. I'm just
just finishing now. So I want to end with this because, this is Neptune in Pisces stuff, really and truly. When Neptune in Pisces is playing at its best, it's compassionate. It's heart-centered. It's about you and I are the same, There's no difference between us. We're both spirits here on the planet going through our spiritual journeys, and we're in the same boat. So in the end, if we can, as Neptune is exiting out of Pisces, if we can try our best to open our hearts our own way and to become a little bit kinder, a little bit more open to another person and what another person is going through, and just being more thoughtful and just being basically more loving. And you can do it in your own way, as I said. Everyone's going to have their way of doing it. Just don't think, what does he mean? It's kind of like, do it in your own way where your feelings and your heart is invested, okay? And so when you can do that, and you can do that while Neptune is in Pisces at the 29th degree, in the 29 degrees of Pisces, I want to say that you'll be navigating that final anaretic degree really, really well. So there we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marc. That was very blissful and very Neptunian, and it feels like a wonderful cleansing from everything that we have experienced today. Goodness me, I am sure everybody's cup is overflowing, literally. Yeah, yeah,
Which
there we
mine
go.
was. It's not quite
That was
full.
wonderful.
We need more.
Yeah. He's telling us it's coffee. No, I'm kidding. That was wonderful. Thank you so, so much for all of that sharing. So much, I've had Neptune squaring my sun, which it is still doing, and probably really will be until it leaves the 29-degree mark. And it's wonderful reconfirmation and validation. And yes, from my heart to yours, it was lovely, a lovely
Thanks, Lisa.
completion.
Thank you.
So let me ask everyone. We have 5 more minutes, sort of unofficially. So can I check in? Actually, before I do, whilst you're all thinking, if you have a question, I've got the chat open and we can just have a play with some questions if you have any. But I neglected to share something at the beginning of today, so I'd like to go back and do that now. And that is that Dijana is also now an OPA representative. She and I are working together to so that we can support all of the OPA members and OPA in general, and all of us as astrologers. It's not just about OPA. We're here with Julija today. The CIA, OPA, the FAA. I feel like we really need to all work together because we are all professional bodies that is really encouraging all of us, whether we are simply wanting to know who am I, or whether we want to be a professional astrologer or anything in between, to have quality astrology like the 4 of us are all representing is incredibly important. Because there are a lot of people out there that are doing astrology that have read a few books and gone online for 2 months and are calling themselves astrologers. And I'm sorry, I hope I'm not offending anybody if I say that, but I think it is very important that we have the mentoring and the structures that we are offering. So anyway, that went off course. Dijana is now OPA satellite, and it is wonderful to have her help and support so that we can grow astrology and your needs and everything else into the future. So I'm sorry, Dijana, I meant to say that at the beginning and I didn't. So do we have any questions? Yes, it is, Pauline. Aquarius rising. All coming together. Any questions to any of us? Looks like everyone's just being very thankful, which which is fantastic.
Right.
So
can I just mention, Lisa, just very quickly,
please,
that I'm doing an OPA talk in September. I'm the OPA speaker for September, and I'm doing a talk on the composite chart. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes, you've done it for me. We can definitely mention that. And I think, I'm not sure, there'll be lots of other talks coming and new talks that'll start to get put together. So yes, in September, and the composite chart, I'll listen to that because I'm talking about the composite chart initially.
And Lisa,
anyway.
And it'll be just before we go. It'll be a couple of weeks before we leave. Yeah.
It will be too, Dijana.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, maybe we can remind people to join the OPA Facebook group for ongoing conversations and collaboration.
Yes, fantastic. I'm looking at you and I am reading the thank you, everyone. Your comments are really, really kind. What are the orbs and the house systems preferred by panel members? Someone's asked. Now, oh my goodness, how long did I say we had? That's a great question. And I'm going, let's all just share. Orbs.
I use Placidus.
I do too.
I use Placidus.
And
you don't, Julija, do you? Sorry, Marc. I'm so sorry.
I use porphyry houses, but we're talking about orbs.
Okay. No, and house systems. So 3 for Placidus, 1 for porphyry.
Right. Yeah, porphyry, because it's easier. Well, it's easier to teach, but you can go further with houses once you understand one really well. And porphyry, because of its equalization between the angles of the houses, it's just comprehending, because people use houses without understanding what the background of their kind of calculations are, let's say. Anyway. But and orbs with the Venus star only use 2 to 3 degrees on either side, because you find that if you got wider orbs, you will have too much information. And I generally use that usually for most, for natal astrology, somewhat wider, but for transit astrology, definitely closer orbs, because those cycles that are repeating or coming back will have a closest pass. Right. And so therefore I use them tighter.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. And thank you for sharing that. And we could open up a whole can of worms just with this discussion alone. Marc, sorry, I cut you off before. So house, system and orbs?
I was just saying, for orbs, my orbs are kind of, for in natal astrology, especially anything to the sun and the moon, can be up to what, 6, 7 degrees away. For minor aspects, I keep them pretty tight, 2 or 3 degrees for minor aspects. For the major ones, I kind of open them up. Of course, they're always going to be the tighter the better. Anything that's super tight is going to be stronger than something that's a little bit wider. But yeah, I'm a little bit more liberal with the strong aspects. The conjunctions, oppositions, and squares mainly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dijana.
I'm very similar to Marc in that way. I'll go up to 7. I actually kind of just use my intuition with it, actually. And sometimes I might, depending on what's going on in the rest of the chart, I might give a wider orb to see how that's going to influence a greater story. So I don't like to be, 100% definitive about it.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that too.
Immutable. It's all connected anyway. I mean, even if we're thinking about aspect, it's like everything's in aspect in some way.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything's in a circle.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'll add one little different piece then, because I would probably use, what, Marc, I mean, I agree with what everyone said, and it's all relevant. It's all what sings to us and how we use our intuition to tap into a chart. And I do use wider orbs, but I'm going to say something that actually Steve taught me a very, very, very long time ago. And that is that aspects are energy. And energy, if we think about the most simple piece, Aries squares Cancer. If you have something in your chart that is in Aries and Cancer, or you have something by transit come into Aries and you have a Cancer moon, energetically, the force will play out. Of course, the orb is going to tell us when we're really coming to the crux of the story, but don't ever underestimate the energy,
still there.
because it's really important and it gets forgotten. And something else that I'm very fortunate to have such amazing teachers come into my life, as we all do, just when we need them. But another discussion was, if you have, let's say, something in Gemini, let's say it's 20 degrees, Jupiter's about to move into Gemini. If you are a duck in a pond, right, and Jupiter jumps into that pond, is the duck going to feel the movement of the water? Is the duck going to get splashed? If he's right next to Jupiter, he's going to get covered in water. If he's in the middle, he might get a splash. And if he's on the other side of the lake, he'll bob up and down, but he's not yet received the energy. So just something extra to throw in, to just remember that, as we were all saying, using, what else is going on in the chart, what patterns, signatures are we seeing? But just remember energy. And as Julia said, aspects are formed by the signs, not the planets. And she said something sort of like that, how I took it anyway. So the energy is very, very important. And I use Placidus probably because my main teachers have taught me through Placidus and it works for me. So I don't want to fix what's not broken at this point in my life as an astrologer. But I think it's great to explore different house systems, because we're all different. And what
Exactly.
sings to one person may not sing to the other. There's no that's right and that's wrong. It's all just what's perfect for us. So we do the best job to help people that we see. So
That's right.
I'm glad that, Julija,
Yeah.
you are using a different system. It's great. And just in answer to the question, when is Greece? There is a trip in September this year. There is another trip in September next year, but there may also be one next May. I am not sure yet. But if you can hop on the website or email me, I can definitely just send you information for you to look over. It's aquariusrising.net.au, and all the Greek stuff is there. But yeah, this September I think is full. I'm just waiting on one lady to confirm, and if she confirms, it's full. But next year gives you plenty of time to plan, and it's a brand new trip next year. So anyway, I think that's all. That's good. Thank you, Susan. I'm glad. It's good, yeah, to talk. You know, we could talk all day. I'd like to actually get together with you guys and do a presentation to everyone and just do stuff like this and have a forum, because we don't get enough of it. You know, sometimes we listen to a lecture and then that's it. So I think that's all the questions for now. You have all been very kind in your comments, and you're right that I think the quality of what Australia has produced is wonderful. And just to go back to what Dijana said, OPA, you know, CIA, check it out, membership. Julija does amazing work. Marc, his school, his teaching, all of our teaching, our consultations, we are all on social media. As I said, please follow us, because it supports us to continue good quality astrology. So, you know, if you're not already following us, hop on and have 4 new friends after you've eaten all your Easter eggs. And I think that is all. So I'm going to save the recording, most importantly, so that I continue to be the OPA satellite. Okay.